claim they like riding, but I know that they ain't. Ride or die. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.
I mean, don't you just like ignore like the like people that are saying dumb stuff though, or like that's you can't do that or what?
I don't think that I'm capable of doing that. Like when you have like the multiple people, I just think that I have a personality type that I get overwhelmed when it's that many people at once, and I'm trying to think of how to address this and how to address that. But that's
Well, it
not
seems to be
everyone
like
else's problem.
coincidentally right at the timing, like you reach your limit on dealing with like multiple people talking right where it's like you're pressed on a very concise like issue.
No, I mean, you see exactly why I left. I even thought that you were talking about the genetic fallacy, which even you agreed would be not a proper critique of what I was saying. But then if you listen to what I'm saying, I'm literally telling these guys it's hard to follow, it's hard to remember what everyone says with everybody jumping in and out. So I think I'm very clear that I'm just frustrated at this point that it's not a more controlled conversation and more on
I
topic.
I actually am sympathetic to that. It's a lot of just
Yeah, but
cacophony of
you
people
also
having
said that what accounts
trying
for
to
you
jump
not
in.
hearing me tell you that was that you're probably like checking out at Walmart or something, and you're like literally talking, like
Well,
you're
when
definitely there.
right when you said that, I remember that was been about the time I was checking out. Then when I was leaving Walmart would have been about the time my audio cut out. And then the
Yeah.
time when you can hear on the audio if you listen closely, where you correct it like two or three times. I'm driving my car. I have an older car. It's got some background noise, which I think makes my audio louder. And I think that that was drowning you out and others out, and everybody was talking.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
but
is all stuff
I
that
mean,
you're
there's
aware
another
of
point in
too.
the conversation I pointed out to you also because when I was saying naturalistic, felt that's the intonation of me repeating the same thing I've already told you again, right? And so
Yeah,
I
I'm
suspect
not.
that's the second time that I told you that.
Yeah, I'm not stating that you didn't say that, Tom. But even like when I came in into the room after, I still had it in my mind that you were talking about the genetic fallacy.
Yeah, but that's not my fault. That's your fault.
Look, I told you how my brain operates when I'm getting like five or six people interjecting, over talking, points going all over the place. And so you can take that or not take that. I can't really help that situation.
I don't know what you mean by take it or not take it. I'm
No,
saying
I mean
that
you can either take my
however you want to cash
explanation
it
or not.
out, it's a fault of yours, not mine.
Sure, it's a fault that he can't mod the room and that you jumped into a conversation that was going on before you ever came in the room or before you jumped in just to add this, and that nobody really paid attention to you other than Jacob, who seemed to want to interject your thoughts. But at the same time, Tom,
Well,
you
Moto
you
also affirmed
can't
it also.
you can't discredit the fact that all these other people were talking at the same time and wanting to make different points.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, some there was over talking for sure, but I mean, most of it was pretty easy to follow. I mean,
Now,
there's a lot
now,
of people that were just saying dumb stuff, but who cares?
now, what I can control though is I can just primarily do my own rooms where I can force it to be one-on-one conversations, and then these kind of mishaps don't happen, and then I won't get overtalked. And maybe that's something that I should strongly consider in the future. May even decrease some of me being frustrated with people.
Yeah, but I don't really think that like these factors that you're saying are really what's precluding you from having these conversations. Because I could systematically eliminate all the variables that you were opposed to right now. I could remove every single person off the room. I could have it just me and you. I could give you mods, whatever you wanted. You're not going to have the conversation, right?
I don't think today progressing the conversation from earlier
Right.
is
Right.
going to be fruitful. No.
Right. So it's not really about that, is it?
Well, no, in that situation, that was what it was about. But this is an entirely new situation where I'm frustrated with people. And so I just know that's not going to be a productive conversation.
James, what were you saying that was the naturalistic fallacy?
He said that God is the creator and sustainer of life, therefore he can take it away.
I had built some other things too because I was making a causal argument that God being the cause of all things, well, out of necessity, all things needing to be maintained by God. And I was building a further argument. I wasn't just making that one assertion. And so I felt too that Tom was being inappropriate by assuming my whole entire argument was summed up in that one sentence. And so I was trying to be charitable to Tom and say, okay, maybe he came in late. Maybe all these guys continuing to jibber jabber. Maybe Tom didn't hear the other points. But I don't think Tom wanted to focus in on that. He only wanted to focus in on the one statement in isolation.
I
What
mean, if
was
you're
what was
saying
the
that,
rest of it?
if all you're saying is that you had sort of like, I don't know, some kind of cumulative argument, and that point was one of the arguments amidst like a group or cluster of arguments, like making a stronger point, that's really all irrelevant to the criticism of that one discrete argument.
No, because that you're isolating that one point, but that point in and of itself is not my argument. That point is a statement within a much bigger argument that I was trying to make while having to respond to five different people.
No, that was an
What would it
argument. God
matter?
is the giver and sustainer of life, therefore God is able to can kill whoever he wants. That's a line of reasoning.
I
That's
mean, even if you
that's the
call it a
naturalistic
premise of it,
fallacy.
it's still fallacious.
So when you make a statement, sometimes a statement in and of itself, if that's all it is, can be fallacious. But if you are making a statement with broader context, it does not necessitate that the argument is fallacious. And so when
Well,
you
it
are
might.
making and
It depends
criticizing,
upon what the broader context is. Like,
well,
what
thank you for not
role
letting me
does that
finish my
statement?
sentence, Gene.
What?
Okay, go ahead.
What's that, James?
No, I was just thanking him for not
So
letting me
James,
finish my sentence.
and then you're just gonna
Because
use that as an opportunity to like bow out, I guess.
No, no,
I mean,
You
look,
interject
when
one
you
no, no.
said
time,
He,
and then
he
you're
cut
just
me
like,
off, so I'm going to let
"That's
him
it."
finish. But I was letting him know I didn't appreciate it.
no, when you pointed that out, I stopped speaking because you correctly pointed out that I was being rude. So go ahead.
Okay, so when I'm building an argument, I'm building it through several points. I feel that Tom's criticism isolated that one statement, and the statement in and of itself was not my argument. And I wasn't building everything tied to that one statement. I was building, and he might not like the argument, he can say it's a bad argument, but I was building a causal argument based on God being the first cause and everything out of necessity, not having a deity like God, that it's dependent on God. And I've made this argument a few times, and I'm fine if somebody thinks it's a bad argument, but it was not the naturalistic fallacy or the genetic fallacy.
So wait, so let me try to understand what the argument's supposed to be. So the what you just
you
said,
should let him
you think that
actually
because God
explain
has
what
these
it
various,
is.
It was actually the
well, I mean,
Sith fallacy. It was the Sith fallacy.
so let me
Thank you,
repeat
Jeff.
back to you what I think I heard, and you can tell me if this is right or not.
Okay.
So I think that you said that God has various sorts of attributes like aseity and so on, and that because God has those attributes, that's why God would be morally justified in killing any member of His creation that He chose.
Yeah, what makes this sense is that God is not obligated to do any of these things, but because God is the creator of life and he's that first cause, God is also the sustainer because nothing else in creation has aseity. Now, I didn't use the term aseity in the other conversation because I didn't think any of those guys would necessarily know what I was, referring to. But so the way I built this argument, and I have some things written down about it somewhere, but in a nutshell, out of those principles that everything proceeds from God, there's a necessary dependence on those things. And if God is an intelligent agent, then God gets to control that which flows from him. And I build a whole argument from that.
So, look, I think what makes that not the naturalistic fallacy is if you say that God sustains all of those things and God is ultimately responsible for them, but in addition, God had no obligation to do any of that,
Yeah,
right? So
that's
you need that last statement because without it, it's going to be if all you have is the first part where you just say that all these things depend upon God, then it would be the naturalistic fallacy.
yeah. And so because of the nature of the room and everybody talking, I was not able to convey my points as well. And frankly, I'm not good enough or capable enough to be having like a conversation where I'm taking on five people at once. I'm just not equipped for that. So it's probably
And by
something
the
that
way,
when it happens, I
oh,
should just mute my mic and leave the room sooner. That would probably be more productive.
but by the way, and I know what you mean when you say the naturalistic fallacy here, but uh, technically that's not the right name for. I understand that maybe you weren't the person that brought up that phrase, but that's technically not not what one should say here. I mean, the what's if you had just said that um, everything depends upon God, and you left the moral premise out, then that wouldn't be a naturalistic fallacy. It would actually be the is ought. Um, it would be it would be improperly inferring an ought from an is, which is not the same thing as the naturalistic fallacy.
Yeah, and we were
Isn't it also
talking
a genetic
earlier.
fallacy, though?
Well, one
What's
second.
that?
We were
I
talking
just.
also before that, just to give you more information about God being in control and sustaining all life, the giver
Right.
and taker of life based on his decision. And we were also building that he's not obligated to give you life. But because of the nature of the room and everybody talking, I'm sure I was not the only one having a hard time following, but I will grant that it was not a great conversation to have.
Sure.
I mean, you can call it
But
whatever
it's
you
not like
want.
someone
The
had a.
point is that he is getting an ought from an is, right? That's what's
It sounded
happening here.
like a question, maybe like why that wasn't the naturalistic fallacy.
Isn't it also just the genetic fallacy, though? Regardless?
I don't. I'm not. Uh, I don't think so. I mean, it.
I mean, the
Um,
naturalistic
He's just saying,
fallacy is getting an ought from an is, right?
The,
well,
no,
the
the
point
naturalistic
is,
fallacy is to
no.
say
well,
that something is to say that something is moral because it's natural. The
yes.
is
That's
ought
the appeal to
dichotomy.
No, no, no.
nature. That's the appeal to
It's
nature.
the appeal to nature fallacy. The naturalistic fallacy was technically a term that more
For the. Yeah.
used in a kind of
Right.
way that can be distinguished from the is ought fallacy. Um, but I think in this context, they were just being used synonymously because in the
Fair.
literature, there's been a kind of conflation of the naturalistic fallacy with the is ought.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Gene, I
Jeff. That's
think
what
is
I was
talking about the appeal
trying
to
to point out.
nature. I mean,
Yeah, no, but the point is when Moore used the term naturalistic fallacy, he meant something a little bit more specific than the is ought fallacy, but it was very closely related to that. And because of that close relation, a lot of people just use, including myself, use the term naturalistic fallacy interchangeably with is ought fallacy. But in its original use, it didn't it meant something a little bit narrower.
Right.
Yeah,
The is
how does anybody think that I was making an is-ought fallacy? Because I'm telling
Because you
you
were.
what
No, he's
God
not.
is doing, but I'm not saying I don't see the ought in there or the. I mean, I just
So
don't
look, here's
gather it.
yeah. So it's not an odd statement, but it's a moral statement. So the idea is that you can't get a moral statement out of a declarative sentence. So or purely declarative sentence. So if you had said something like, "Oh, God has properties X, Y, and Z," like God is Ase and the Creator, put in whatever properties you want, um, then it's you can't then infer from that uh, God has no obligation to leave us in existence, or God wouldn't be violating an obligation to take us out of existence. Nothing about the morality of God's actions would be implied by the fact that God has the properties named. But actually, your argument's a little more sophisticated like that, and so more sophisticated than that, and that's what perhaps people were missing. You clarified in this conversation that part of your case is that um, God didn't have an obligation to begin with to sustain us in existence. That was one of the premises in your argument. So if so the argument you're creating, it looks something like this: God sustains things in existence, and God has no obligation to do so. Now that's not getting whatever you conclude for you can get a moral conclusion from that because one of your premises is a moral statement, right? The premise that says that God has no obligation to sustain creatures in existence. If you hadn't included that premise, then it would be an is-ought fallacy.
Now, I will also concede that given how like heated the conversation got and the people jumping in and the fact I was in Walmart doing some shopping at the time, that I could very well have not conveyed my argument in a very straight, concise way, given all the circumstances. So I will take part of that issue on myself as well.
Sure. I don't know. I wasn't listening very carefully when you were playing the clip, um, but I think what was going on was that people thought you were just describing some of God's attributes and then arriving at a conclusion about the morality of God's actions on the basis of those attributes.
Yeah, he was doing that.
Had you,
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was doing that.
well,
there's
no,
about
because he
30 there's about 30 to 40
Why you
minutes
keep
of the
saying
clip
no?
that we didn't
I
play.
listened to it. I heard
Tom,
it.
there was about 30 to 40 minutes of the clip that we didn't play. And when we were talking about
Yeah,
God
and
being
why is this guy telling me that you didn't say it when not only did he wasn't there, not only when we played it was that 30 40 minutes not included, why is this guy telling me what you did or did not fucking say?
well, he's not saying that, hey, in this argument that James did not misspeak or James maybe did not say something that appeared that way. What he's saying is the way I'm presenting my argument to him in clarification is
Just
not
now.
the naturalistic fallacy or an isot. That's all he's saying.
He's
Yeah, but
saying
it's
that,
not
that's right.
that's
your
only
argument.
because of
He's
the
saying like
addition.
you should put obligated in here to fix it. And then he's like,
Right.
yeah, he's not saying that. I mean, like, get out of here, dude.
Like I don't know what happened in the original conversation because I wasn't there and haven't listened to it. What I do know
Well
is
then,
that the argument
bro,
that what
why you got your hands fucking? Why are you elbow deep in the fucking dough then?
I don't I'm not sure what that means, but I
It's
don't think that
because
I
James
Dude, get the
am.
recounting
fuck
it
out of here,
just
dude. Get
now,
the fuck out.
because when James recounted it just now, he added obligate no having no obligation. That's what he's responding to. Maybe you didn't hear James recount
Yeah,
his
that.
argument just now.
Yeah, he's gone.
Did you miss that, Tom?
What?
Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Did I
James
miss
just told us
what?
James just told us what his argument was, and in this time he added God not having an obligation. That's what he's responding to.
Yeah, who cares?
The fuck? What are you talking about?
Who
You wanna
cares if
talk
he
more
said,
about
"Hey, you
how he
should say
didn't add
this," and
that
he's like,
before?
"Okay, cool," and James is like, "Okay, cool," and then like, but I'm not talking about like the fucking like workshopped version. I'm talking about the original.
That shit's over.
And when he says something like he didn't say he didn't commit the naturalistic fallacy or blood this that, he was even talking about appeal to nature.
I think there's the same.
A few moments later.
But yeah, I mean, so Tom, if you heard the recording, Tom could barely get a word in edgewise in that other room. So in his room or whoever's room, that last room, he had this opportunity to talk to James, and he felt that Dan was interfering a little bit.
Actually, if you go back and you watch the replay, Dan was asking
Uh-huh.
me questions about my position or Gene, and I
Uh-huh.
was answering him and explaining it. He believed that
Uh-huh.
my position didn't arrive in the contradiction, that Tom tried to jam down my throat and everyone's throat. Tom then
What
got mad and
contradiction?
threw him off stage.
Do you mean
Whoa, that
No,
went
fallacy?
off
not
his mouth.
fallacy.
You know
Oh, here
what's
we all
Not
fallacy?
go.
sorry,
Here we
not
all go. When you
contradiction. Sorry, not
fallacy, right?
contradiction. Fallacy. And when the gentleman Gene did not agree with Tom, Tom booted him from the room and got pissed. That's what happened.
I thought that was
Dan,
Don't
you want to
sugarcoat
explain?
it.
I thought that was
Wow.
somebody
Dan, you want to
doing.
explain?
I thought that was
What?
somebody doing
Oh,
a James impression.
Can
James
we
has
do?
become a meme of himself.
great. Dan, you want to explain to him why it's still the same fallacy?
I don't know that it is. I mean, he had a moral premise in addition to a purely descriptive premise, and that's what he needs to avoid the Izot dichotomy. Or the Izot fallacy,
How
rather.
how
All
does
right, kick
that
him out. Kick him out. Just kick him
how
out.
does that go, James?
What? Oh, guessing
Are you
James.
James?
No.
Jesus.
No. The
Tell
thing was is
JJ.
that my claim was that Gene, from what I described to him, did not observe the fallacy that Tom was trying to stick with me with. Tom got frustrated with Gene and booted him off the stage for disagreeing with Tom.
No.
That's exactly when he booted him off. Was he disagreed with me, JJ? I mean, I know that you guys are like fanboys and you want to like hug the rabbit,
You
but
don't know
if
that.
he does that, then he does that.
A few moments ago.
It's not
That's right.
That's
your
only
argument.
because of
He's
the
saying like
addition.
you should put obligated in here to fix it, and then he's like,
Right.
yeah, he's not saying that. I mean, like, get out of here, dude.
Look, I don't know what happened in the original conversation because I wasn't there and haven't listened to it. What I do know
Well,
is
then,
that the argument
bro,
that. What?
why you got your hands fucking? Why are you elbow deep in the fucking dough then?
I don't. I'm not sure what that means, but I
It's
don't think that
because
I
Yeah,
James
David, get the
am.
recounting
fuck
it
out of here,
just
David.
now.
Get the fuck out.
Because when James recounted it just now, he added having no obligation. That's what he's responding to. Maybe you didn't hear James recount
Yeah,
his
that.
argument just now.
Yeah, he's gone.
Did you miss that, Tom?
What?
Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Did I
James
miss
just told us.
what?
James just told us what his argument was, and in this time he added God not having an obligation. That's what he's responding to.
Yeah, who cares?
A few moments later. It's
You don't
just a
know that.
fact if that's what happened in the other room. Someone can pull up the replay, play that part, play when Gene is saying that I'm not committing the fallacy, play Tom getting frustrated, and then play right when Tom zaps him from the stage. You
But do you
can't pretend
remember? Do
like
you
it was another
remember? No,
reason.
hold on. But do you remember what Tom said? What did he say? He said he didn't want to talk about the workshopped version of your argument. He wanted to talk about what you said in the recording. He said that Gene wasn't there for the whole conversation. He didn't listen to it. So Tom doesn't want to deal with someone that's granting you the favor of his intelligence to clean up your mistakes. That's not what happened, James.
So normally you're semi-reasonable, but the thing is that when we're all conveying that that room was crap, Tom couldn't get his point out the way he wanted it. I couldn't get my point out the way I wanted it. You guys are asking me my point. Here I am. I'm clarifying it. I'm giving it to Gene. And then Tom boots me from the room. So Tom wants me to make my point or defend a point in a room where even in the replay I said I couldn't get it out the way I wanted it. And even you hear Tom trying to interact and he can't get it out. I mean, you guys in this fanboy like atmosphere is just ridiculous. You guys need to grow a set and be your own
So,
people.
so the problem is that in the recording, like I was just listening the entire time while I was making some stuff and everything, and Tom played multiple instances of that recording of that conversation where you were able to clarify exactly what you meant, and every time you were just clarifying that because it's the case that he has this power, it is the case that he has this power to do something, that he ought to be able to do it to that person. You kept saying that, well, God did create these people, so he has the ability to take their lives. God is the one who's sustaining you, and that means he is allowed to stop sustaining you. Stuff like that. You had many times to clarify, and every time you clarified, you just kept going back to making some descriptive statement about God having these abilities, saying that God is doing this thing, and then that because of that, he ought to be able to do the thing.
So, Jovan, I'm going to give you one more chance to prove to me that you try to be honest to any degree.
That was
Are
completely
you?
honest.
No, no.
Everything he
I'm
just
giving.
said is completely
I'm
honest.
giving Jovan one more chance, and then I'm going to write him off permanently.
He
Are
just he
you?
just
Are
gave
you
you
trying to
he
say,
just gave you
Jovan?
an honest recounting
JJ,
of what happened.
JJ, hang on. Let me speak. There you guys are trying to control the narrative. I'm just going to give him one more chance.
Calm
Are you
down, sir.
trying to say? Okay, I guess this is
No,
the
go
way
ahead.
it is
No, go ahead,
in this
James.
room, and I can't talk, and you guys just want to control the narrative.
No, I thought you were done, James. Go ahead.
You thought I
You
was done
didn't,
when I wasn't talking,
JJ.
JJ?
Go
You
ahead,
thought when
James.
I'm still talking that I'm done?
You
Right.
weren't talking
I'm
when I
just going to
started
do a room
talking.
about this tomorrow.
No,
You
no, no,
people
no.
are
James,
pathetic.
James, look, JJ's going to be quiet. Say what you want to say to Jovan.
JJ's fight room.
James is basically, oh, he moved, but
Oh, he
James is
ran
basically going to
away
Hey,
say,
like a little
JJ!
James was
bitch.
Speaking
basically,
of stomping on the food,
A few moments later.
and it doesn't bother them at all.
I'm not saying it's a good thing that people overtalk each other, but I'm saying that it's, however it results, it's not the product of like some sort of like anti-Christian bias that this room has. And that's evident from the fact that we all overtalk each other even when there's no Christians here.
And Christians overtalk each other all the time.
Oh, yeah, it's not some plot, it's just that some people interrupt other people. And some people really don't like it. There's
JJ,
nothing biased about it.
JJ,
Well, I don't think it's just the
what was the
overtalking.
last thing you heard James say that made you
Oh,
think that he was done?
are you going to prey on my memory now, bitch?
No, it's just there's no possible world where you were listening to what he was saying and thought he was done.
There is, obviously.
What was he saying?
No idea at this moment. I'd have to think about it.
He said, I'm going to give you one more chance, Jovan. In what world is that him stopping? In what world is that him just stop talking right there and he's not going to go on further?
Be weird if he was done after saying that, wouldn't he?
A few moments later.
Hear me now?
I wasn't there this morning, but it's what was related
Mic
to
check.
me, so.
Mic check.
It's a
Yeah.
you good.
Okay. So when you say, Gene, when you say it's not obligated, doesn't that just mean it's permissible?
No, because you could like an obligation to do something because you have an obligation not to do it. Like, I don't
You
have
can
an
have an
obligation
obligation.
to, I don't have an obligation to murder people. That doesn't mean that it's permissible for me to murder people.
Well, that would be in two different senses, right?
No,
So
no. So look,
when
if,
you
there's three
when you
different.
say it's when you say that he's not obligated to do something moral, therefore he is permitted to do something moral. I think not obligated is just the same as it's
Well, that could
permissible.
be, but if that's the case, then that would mean that the argument is trivial. It wouldn't mean that the argument commits the is-ought fallacy.
Well, it'd be trivial in
I
the
never
fact
claimed that
that
it was a good argument. I
not
just claimed that it
obligated and
didn't.
permissible are the same. And if that's the case, then you can just get rid of the not obligated. And in that case, it would be an is-ought fallacy.
No, because in that case, the argument would just be tautological.
Well, the tautological component is not obligated and permissible. And if that's redundant, well, then we can just eject one of them. And therefore, all you're left with, and
No, but
then
no, that's not right. You can't just, if you have a tautological argument, you can't just reject one of the premises in virtue of it being tautological.
no, I would reject the redundancy.
No, well, but it's not redundant.
Right.
If one of the premises is the same as the conclusion, then the argument is tautological and question begging. But you can't just like remove one of the premises.
Dan, for 1 second, take the obligated part out.
Okay.
Then it's is-ought, right?
Yeah.
Right. And the ought part. Now take the is part. And how do you get to the not obligated part?
The way that the argument was explained to me was that the argument has two premises. One premise is a descriptive premise, and the other premise it makes a moral claim, and then the conclusion makes a moral claim.
No, that's your argument. That's not James's argument.
That was what James gave me. So
Oh, no, sir. Come on. You said it would be okay if you had some obligation, and then he goes, John Lee, yeah, affirmative verbal tick, and then he just started talking, right?
he
That was your
gave me
argument,
the
sir.
premise that
Okay, tell me what he gave you. Tell me
he
what he
gave me
gave
the
you.
premise that he gave me a descriptive premise about like God's aseity or something, and then the other premise that he gave me was a premise about God not having an obligation to sustain you.
Yeah, I think he said explicitly God's not obligated, and then went on. I mean, he gave God's properties, aseity, sustaining, blah, 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 blah. Then he said, and God's not obligated, blah, blah.
Right.
So it follows that he could, whatever, end your life.
Yeah.
But by that, I think he just means that it's permissible for him to do whatever.
Look, if that's what he means,
Therefore,
then
if he does
the argument
whatever,
just
it's
happens to fail for a different reason, right? Like it's a bad argument, but the reason that you've described it as a bad argument is because the argument is tautological and question begging, right? Like one of the statements that's in contention is assumed as a premise.
Look,
That's why it's
now we're analyzing your argument. I don't think that James, like, I literally played the recordings of him saying it, right? So don't tell me that he was saying this, right?
well, I don't know what
That's
he
just
was saying
bullshit.
like before. All I know is what he was saying in the conversation that I had with him.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Right. Well,
saying,
I
Tom.
don't
I
care
was there
about
this
that.
morning. It sounds foreign to what I
That's
heard this morning.
about it. All Dan
Oh,
is
you
talking.
were there, John? You're
I
saying,
was not in
oh,
the
sorry,
room
what are you
where
I
saying,
was
John?
fucking there.
I was in the very early room with Andrew and all that, and I think, yeah, James, to me, was making a naturalistic fallacy.
James has run away at this point now.
Oh, that was, wasn't that yesterday, John?
No, it was early this morning.
Or was that?
Very early.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, I can't comment on conversations I wasn't present for.
Well, that didn't stop you earlier, did it?
Tom, Jesus fucking Christ.
I was commenting on the argument that he gave me. I wasn't commenting on like
Yeah, I don't think he gave you that though. I don't think he gave you that.
He did.
I mean, like not in any sort of like organic way. I mean, like that.
Look, this is what I thought that I heard. Okay, so maybe I heard incorrectly. fine, if that's possible. But this is what I thought he was saying.
Not significantly incorrectly. I think, Tom, you were searching the recording for something, and James told Dan what his argument was. But this time he added in that God was not
Gene
obligated.
told James what his argument was. Yeah, that
I
sounds
don't
about
think so.
right, JJ.
I don't think
But
so.
that isn't the reason he's not obligated.
That's not what I just said.
I thought the
Tom.
reason. I thought the reason he
Jesus,
wasn't
Tom.
obligated was because it's not a moral obligation for anyone to have to continue to sustain something. I thought that was. Well, it would matter. Well, first of all, I think we can give it counterexamples to that, to where we would say that you are morally obligated to continue to sustain something. But I think I don't, because he keeps. Well, you guys were saying that he was appealing to something about like a tautology about himself. But I thought he was appealing to the moral principle.
No, Tom is saying that just saying that he's not obligated, is just to say that it's permissible.
Correct.
And that's all going to be based on God's properties, aseity, blah, 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 blah. And that's the redundancy.
I mean, look, if it's redundant,
Yeah,
then
but
that's just another way of saying that the
different
argument's
than
trivial.
Yeah, but that's not the naturalistic fallacy.
It is
Yeah,
odd.
but when I levied the allegation of naturalistic fallacy, it wasn't to the James workshopped argument. It was to what he said.
That wasn't, James offered the not obligated part. He added that part in. Whether he knows why he did it or not is
Yeah, but when
questionable.
James says that, he's just saying that God can do X or God can do Y. And he's not like required to do either. That's what he means by not obligated. So
Yeah,
James is
because
saying
God's
God's like
properties, he can
this.
do
God
this.
can do X or he can do Y. Therefore, it's moral for him to do Y. That's what his argument is.
Right. And adding in that he's not obligated not to do Y is fucking irrelevant.
But I would say God's obligated to take life when sin has occurred, because the wages of sin is death.
Oh,
But
fuck
that's
off,
Yeah,
man.
maybe
okay,
another
dude. Just take your
discussion.
scripture and just keep it to yourself.
You understand what I'm saying, Dan?
I mean, look, I think we can talk about a few different arguments here, right? Like, one is like the argument that
We could, but did what I said make any sense? Adding in the not obligated part is irrelevant.
it's what saves the argument from not being a naturalistic fallacy or like an Izzat fallacy.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.